Hey folks, it is October the 8th, and today we're going to finish up our unit on the Progressive Era and World War I. And we may go ahead and start into the next unit, at least talking over the overview and the vocabulary. I haven't posted that one yet, so I will make the PDF and post it for you later. We are not going to have a quiz today, though, so expect that sometime next week, and it's only over vocabulary terms, the ones that are on the notes. So every time when we start a unit, we have that title with the age, or not the age, but like the year range. And then I always have vocabulary terms. So your quiz is going to be over those terms. So if you're not sure what those terms are, check your notes. If your notes don't have it, check Google Classroom. I put all this stuff up there. So it's like free and in the open. So according to my highly successful, very nice in-person students, we ended off talking about when the Allies were hammering out the Treaty of Versailles, and this treaty will end the First World War. We had Woodrow Wilson was calling for certain things in the League of Nations, and also open seas for trading and stuff like that. And of course, self-determination, where a nation, where people could become their own nation based on their common interests and ancestry. And they were like Europe's dividing itself up and to new states. They're dividing up the rest of the world. Even some of it being used to make buffer states between Western Europe and communist Russia. So we see a paper up here. What's the headline for this? The Bisbee Daily Review. Yeah, Russian fleet order.
President.
Yeah, President dangerously ill, and there we see a picture of Woodrow Wilson. So, peace treaty ready to be signed by next Wednesday. Say delegates. So, a treaty is a law, and it's a law that's agreed upon between more than one nation. It's a big deal. And so, according to the United States Constitution, yes, the president is like the chief diplomat. They talk to other countries, but they can't make a treaty by themselves. It has to be approved by Congress, because Congress are the ones who make laws in America. So if a treaty is like a law, Congress has to do it because they're the lawmaking body. So he's going to have to convince Congress for all parts of the treaties. But he's going to have some problems, as we will see in just a second. Wilson returned to America, but needed to submit the treaty to Congress for a 2/3 majority vote for ratification. So it's not even like 51% or anything like that, 2/3. So you have to get the vast majority of senators on board. The Senate was controlled by his opponents, the Republicans. And so, remember, he's a Democrat. The Republicans wanted to end war too, which was good, but what they didn't like was some of the parts of the treaty that Wilson introduced and this opposition was led by Senator Henry Cabot Lodge. So they were like, look, we don't like this because it called for the making of the League of Nations. The Republicans were worried that if we entered this international league, that foreign countries would have a vote whether American soldiers could go to war or not, even if Americans didn't want to. They weren't comfortable with this. And also, by doing so, it would lessen our sovereignty. So sovereignty is your ability to rule your country. So like in America, the people are sovereign, but it's the American people that are sovereign. So the idea of having foreign countries tell us to go to war was something that they weren't very excited about. So Wilson instead, because he thought that this was the path for international peace, he brought his case to the American people, and he was like, hey, tell your representatives to vote for this. He circuited 29 cities giving speeches on why this was such a great idea. But unfortunately for him, he suffered a series of debilitating strokes. This left him half paralyzed. He was no longer able to do his job as president. The treaty would then fail multiple votes due to fears that the treaty would commit U.S. troops to foreign wars, America would lose sovereignty, and there's some other points as well that they weren't comfortable with. The League of Nations failed to manifest due to no U.S. involvement. So yeah, other countries are like, hey, America, this League of Nations thing is your idea and you won't even vote for it and do it. So it didn't happen. We do know that something like this will happen later with the United Nations and in some ways with NATO alliance later, but that's going to come later. That's going to be that's going to be at the end of World War II with the war in Europe. So Wilson will spend the rest of his presidency in privacy. They're going to keep this secret from the public, or they're going to do their best to. There were rumors coming out. Essentially, his cabinet, his advisors and his wife are going to fulfill his functions as president until he's out of office. So there he is. He's debilitated. He's unable to do his job. He's being nursed. His wife is taking care of him, but she's also telling his advisors on what she believed how things should be done according to how she believed his wishes were, right? So this is going to help lead later on to something called the 25th Amendment, to where there's a process of removing the president if he's like super sick or like out of his mind or crazy or something like that. So for like health reasons. So because the Constitution had outlines on in case the president dies and stuff, but it didn't say anything about no strokes. Yeah, I've noticed all my classes have been like creepy quiet all day. Well, no, I think okay. At first, one of my classes was very talkative, but like they keep coming in from study hall, and I think they're just kind of bored. Second period.
We just came out of English.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So y'all are like totally like jazzed, right?
Usually at lunch it's really loud and today it was really quiet. I didn't like it.
Because everybody was just too busy eating instead of talking.
It finally makes it
Weirdly quiet.
Did that Jamie girl leave?
No, she went online.
Yeah, she went virtual for reasons that I don't know. But that's cool. I mean, that's why we got the lectures going on. We got the Google Classroom. In fact, I'm going to send out a reminder email with the link for our videos and stuff and all that good stuff. All right, let's go to the last one for this unit.
Oh
You
my
ready?
god.
No, you ready? No? I mean, I can keep it here a second longer if you need to.
There's
So,
one more.
all right.
I don't know what it was. Okay, yes.
All right, cool. So, last one for this unit. So, this is Wall Street in New York. Yeah, what do you think happened? Oh, it was something other than that, but you got the right idea.
War.
Oh, it's a bomb. There's acts of terrorism. So, during and after the First World War, there was places like New York had an average of a bombing, at least a bombing once every month or so, but sometimes more. There was cops were being assassinated. There were people trying to kill mayors. Sometimes people were attacking priests and burning down churches, and these were by groups of anarchists, people we talked about before, but also people who were avowed communists. Right? They wanted to bring about a revolution away from capitalism and things like that. And so these folks were. This is going to institute something called the Red Scare, and so. With the war over, many Americans wanted to get back to normal, especially war veterans returning home. Unfortunately, anarchists and communists began to enact acts of terror across the nation. Now, of course, anarchists are completely anti-government, whereas, and so they just hate authority, right? They hate authority. They hate symbols of government, symbols of religion. It's not a very well-grounded ideology, though. It's not one of those things where like they have an answer for things. It's just like angst in a lot of ways. Whereas communism is based upon a world theory that the world has been going in a certain way, and it's going to go in a certain way, as far as being like a super democratic, atheist, socialist world government. And one of the ways to do it is through what they call the rising of the proletariat. And that's just basically normal people rising up and overthrowing their governments and their churches and establishing a new world order. So nothing new there. This kind of thing has happened early on in different forms, like with Jacobins and stuff. And you see some signs of it today. In April of 1919 alone, 34 bombs were found in the homes of prominent individuals, ranging from J.P. Morgan to Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes. So there was a lot of mail bombs being put in people's doorsteps and stuff like that, lots of it. So one of the bad things about dynamite being around everywhere, you didn't have to have a license back then to buy dynamite. It was used for construction. Farmers used them all the time. Yeah, I mean, like a lot of times to like clear out rocks and tree stumps and things like that to help make, especially back when tractors and stuff weren't that good and expensive. People would use dynamite to make like cow ponds and stuff like that. So it was a commonly used thing. So yeah, people would actually. So around 1,000 radicals would be rounded up and deported, many to Russia. So yeah, that's one thing we used to do back then. If you were of a political ideology that the United States people saw as dangerous, they would deport you and they would send you to a country that had that ideology. So Russians were communists. We had communists in America. Some communists were killing people. So people identified publicly as communists, we put them on a boat, sent them to Russia. Many of them actually thought that this was a good thing. Many of them thought that they were going to a place where they could live with others like themselves. But unfortunately, a lot of them found out that when they went to Russia, that it wasn't quite idealistic as they thought. So like it was totalitarian, and they didn't accept free speech or thoughts that were against the government line. So many of them wound up in death camps, gulags, and so many Americans died there in Russia. Got a book on my to-do read list about people who were shipped there and died. Huh? Yeah, go ahead. In the north, however, so we got these people, we got violence, but the thing is, sure, so you got some bad actors doing bad things, hurting innocent people on one hand, but on the other hand, people are going to use this fear of communism and anarchists in the Red Scare, and they're going to use it to exploit and hurt African Americans. So like African American organizations would be falsely accused of socialism, leading to race riots and lynchings across the country. So you would have like groups of poor black farmers, right? They would have community meetings. Sometimes they'd be educational on like farming methods and stuff like that. Then groups like the KKK would find out, and they would come and they would round them up, beat them up, murder them, and things like that. So the Red Scare on one hand was a response to terrorism, and on the other hand, it was exploited for racist stuff. So that's why you got to be careful sometimes whenever it comes to fear, because sometimes fear can be used as a tool. And that's the last one for this unit. So that was a long unit. I had 47 slides on that one. Yeah, I know, right? So, all right. Good stuff. Good stuff. Now today, we're gonna start a little bit of the next unit, but we're not gonna go into the points. I'm just gonna show you the vocabulary terms, and then we're gonna go over a broad overview.
Did you put those in the, what, are those in the, Google Classroom?
It will be. When I'm done with the recording, I'm gonna use this laptop to convert this into a PDF. So it's like a smaller, easier to read file, and we'll put it on Google Classroom. I want to email a reminder to our online students where to go to find my, because I'm not sure if everybody's coming in and watching the videos. I don't really have a way to monitor if somebody watched the video or not. If you're not watching the video, you're not getting the information. If you're not getting the information, how are you going to pass the class? How are you going to get the grade? How are you going to get it?
Was J.P. Morgan and one of the millionaires?
Yeah, he was a super rich millionaire. He's a big finance guy, like banks and lending and stuff like that. So, trading in the stock market, all that stuff. And of course, Supreme Court, they make a lot of big decisions regarding like law and of course constitutionality of law. It is a big symbol of government, especially federal government. All right, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So here's the next major unit. Here's the first picture for it. So we have two things here that show a lot that have to do with the 20s. So this is like the roaring 20s, it's known as. This time of like economic boom in America. Lots of freedom, stuff like that. But then we're also at the same time, we're going to have restrictions as well. We'll see some things about that. So on the left, what are those cool cats doing? Yeah, they're having like a happy dance, right? So on the right, what about those guys?
Advertising.
Yeah, looking for work. So yeah, this is a time period when the economy is going to grow, cities are going to grow further, but it's also going to be a time period where we see the introduction of the Great Depression. So yeah, it's going to lead to a lot of people not having work, not having hope, and stuff like that, at least in the municipalities and in the Dust Bowl. So, Roaring 20s, America, 1920, 1929. So, So 1920, 1929. And so, surprise, surprise, we're going to have some terms. So, this is a time period where you had a lot of flapper, it was called like flapper girls, like for their fashion. They're moving away from like the old Gibson girl kind of fashion stuff. So like fur coats were in, hats, had the hair pinned up, all that stuff. Guys wore suits very often. Always wearing a blazer and a tie.
It's been 100 years.
100 years. All right, so here's our vocabulary for this unit. Pretty short definitions, right? So terms to know. First one is migration. This is movement from one place to another. If you already know a term, you're like, I know what that means. You don't have to write it down. Consumerism. This is the increased buying of products. These are super short. Like when I got the definitions, they were much larger, but I tried to make them shorter. Tradition. Relating to long established styles, practices, ideas, or morality. Modernity. Relating to recent or contemporary styles or ideas. It's just like what's around the most, right? Red, American slang referring to communism or a communist. Because it's going to be a big topic. People are scared of it, but a lot of the horror stories from communist nations haven't been given light yet. And Americans aren't actually going to quite know just how bad communist Russia or Maoist China will be until the 70s. We're not going to hear a lot of the horror stories from like the prison camps and stuff like that yet. So at that time will come. So migration, consumerism, tradition, modernity, and red. Anybody need more time? All right, now you don't have to necessarily write on this one. This one's just an overview, so you'll know what the unit's about. So, what were the 20s all about? This period of American history was seen as a return to its tradition of international isolationism. So, like the Spanish-American War, World War I, McKinley, Teddy Roosevelt, and Wilson was all about looking outward to places like Europe, South America, Asia, things like that for trade, and also, of course, like war and expansion and stuff like that. And Americans saw the horrors of World War I, and we really just wanted to come back to our roots, come back and focus on America. And also, a lot of Americans, like we saw from that little glimpse of the Red Scare, was afraid that too much international influence would lead to the threat of communism coming home. So it's a time period where we're kind of like wanting to just lay off and stay away from all that. Industry was very well established in America at this time, and the economy boomed as production rose in order to fill consumerist taste. And some historians say that a lot of the reason for that boom is because you're going to see a lot of deregulation. So with the progressive era, you saw that a lot of standards were set in order to make sure that products were safe, that workers had more rights. But then in the 20s, the government's going to start really laying back and not focusing so much. We're going to see that with the Coolidge administration. And because of that, you're going to see a lot of entrepreneurship. So you're going to have a lot of businesses open up, lots of jobs, but also we're going to see some pretty risky trading in the stock market based off of people taking loans to buy stocks and things like that. So that's going to lead to some problems too. Socially, this period was characterized by social changes as women pushed for more rights. And African American culture experienced a renaissance as exemplified by the Jazz Age, which is going to be essentially like music that's going to have African American roots, but it's one of those things that's going to cross the race boundary. The consequences of prohibition, remember that's the legalization of alcohol through the Constitution, also came to light as violent crime skyrockets. And because you're going to have violent crime from prohibition, you're going to see the government is going to respond by expanding the federal police force to try to counter that. So you're going to see one leading into the other. Hey, Elijah, I'm going to pull up our vocabulary terms for you because you don't really need to write that one. All right, folks. So that's going to end it for our lecture today. When we come back, short and sweet this time. So we come back next time. We're going to talk more about the Roaring 20s and move on from there. I'll let you know about the quiz when I can get together. See you later.
Can you look at it?
From what we do over?
Just started.